I just got the thumbs up from my tech support and we are live. All right, for those of you tuning in or watching on Facebook later or watching on our YouTube, my name is Susanna Maurer. I am the Publicity Director for Ambassador International, and this is episode 3 of our author interview series. And I have with me today one of our award-winning authors, Judy. There we go. Said your name wrong. Judy DuCharme, despite me not being able to pronounce her name. Judy was kind enough to join me here in England from Florida, thanks to the modern wonder of technology. Judy, thank you for joining me today.
Very often is salmon. You get the sockeye salmon, the really good stuff, with frozen vegetables, and just bake it together with some sauces, and it's nutritious and wonderful. And then steak is another good one.
That is good. That is good. I think my Pinterest generation calls that a sheet dinner, because we just throw it on a sheet and stick it in the oven. We like to make up words for everything.
It's easy. It's very easy.
So today we are discussing all of her books, but really we are discussing Lainey of the Door Islands. Judy, do you want to share with our audience that tagline you just shared with me a few minutes ago that I love so much?
It's Anne of Green Gables in the Midwest.
Yes. And I have to say, when I was doing some research on her book and was writing things about it, my first thought was, this is Anne of Green Gables in the Midwest. And then I just wondered if I was making that up, if I was applying my experiences, but no, that is Lainey's book and Lainey's story. And I am so excited that Judy has written this for today's children and today's American children. Have you gotten to visit the places in your books?
Yes, all of them. And the lighthouses. The one where she starts out on Pilot Island, I haven't been in there because you can't actually go on the island. It's very small and it's in disrepair, but I take the boat cruise out around there. And the man who does the tour and is the guide and gives you all the information, he is one of the endorsers of the book. And so I drew on a lot of his information. Then she's out on Rock Island, and we've walked the perimeter of that island. We've been in the lighthouse a few times, and then Washington Island and Northern Door. It's where I live. So, yes.
So you are writing what you know, but in addition to knowing, you've been there and you've walked the places that Lainey has walked. Yes. Do you feel like that helped you when you were crafting her story? Helped you pull the readers there too?
Yes, and this is my 7th book, and I just for years had thought I should write a book about Door County. Everybody loves to visit Door County. It's a big tourist area, and it just never came. And then one day it fell in my spirit, and I sat down at the computer, and I don't know if I wrote like 5,000 words in one set. And I said to my husband, I'm writing and I can't stop. That's how it was. And I'm writing a sequel right now.
Ooh, well, that's fantastic.
It started kind of the same way. So I'm in the middle of that.
One of my authors just used the term, she just said that the stories just pop in her head out of nowhere. And I love that idea, just ambling along. You mentioned that earlier. You'll be walking on the beach and the story will just jump into your head. And I love that, because I feel like those are the stories that really come alive. And that is an adventure that you can take your readers on, instead of just a story that you have to feel like you're slogging through.
Right. Yeah. I always think it's the one that runs through my mind, but the one that sticks in my spirit. That's the one I have to write. Yeah.
That is a really good phrase for people who are trying to figure out what to write, is not just the one who runs through your mind, but the one that sticks in your spirit, because would you say that's the story that has to be written? That somehow
it is. Yes.
That has to be reported. So I think we kind of went over this when we talked about visiting, but did you feel like you had to do a lot of research in addition to the visits?
Yes, I still did, because it's in the late 1800s. There's shipwrecks in the story. I needed to research that. I knew about them, but I wasn't familiar with the details, and so I had to do that. And then for promos, I went to all the places and did like 30-second to 1 minute little videos of, this is such and such a place where Lainey went, and I'd give a little teaser about the story and invite everybody to come to Door County and visit the places where the book took place.
Oh. Have you heard of people coming to Door County because of reading the book, or have people not told you that yet?
Not yet. It just came out last July, but I'm kind of hoping that people will.
Especially this next summer when people are probably more comfortable traveling. Absolutely. That's such a fun promotion for your home county too, to have a book written about it. I kind of love that. It's kind of like the best thing you can do for your hometown, essentially. What is your favorite part of Lainey?
A couple of parts. When Clifford gets lost in the blizzard on the ice.
Okay.
And almost ends up, he could have easily drowned. And then another one is when they're at the Valentine's ball, and I'll just leave it at that. It's quite humorous and telling. So
I love that. Do you enjoy then writing comedic scenes? Do you feel like that comes easily to you?
I don't know if it. I think it's just to me. I think I have a good sense of humor, and I enjoy including that in the book, and then it's almost embarrassing when I go back rereading, getting caught up and do the next part, and I'm laughing and I'm crying, and I know exactly what's going to happen.
That's good though, that you can get emotionally engaged in it to that point.
Yes.
Oh, I love that. I love books that can make me laugh and cry at the same time, which again, Anne of Green Gables always did. So.
And this will.
That's perfect. What genre do you consider this book to be in?
It's labeled as young adult, but I also think of it as historical because it's in the late 1800s. And so it's young adult, although all the adults who have read it love it. Right. And so, but my friend's 13-year-old daughter read it and she loved it. So young adult and historical. Which
again ties into the Anne of Green Gables series because it works with both. And personally, that was one of my favorite genre combinations to hit as a tween and then young teenager, just because it was interesting. It wasn't modern day. I could learn about people from another time. Even when I was writing about Lainey for her news release, I felt inspired by her. I felt inspired by the character that I was learning about just from reading excerpts of the book. And I think that's really important nowadays, too, for us to read as adults and for us to give our children to read. Here is a story of character and someone who's telling and someone who lived in a completely different time. And then it's not like a moral lesson, like slap you over the head with it. But it is something that we want our children to read and grow from and learn from. So I think that is great that you have given that to the world, because we can't have too many good books in the world. What other genres do you write in? Because this is something I find fascinating about you.
Okay, well, Blood Moon Redemption, that came out in October of 2018, and it is more on the suspense side. It has Israeli history, it has prophecy, it has a terrorist plot. It's what I loved. The publisher, Sam Lowry, said it keeps you on the edge of it's gripping and keeps you on the edge of your seat from the beginning to the last moonrise.
That's perfect. That's a great endorsement by Dr. Lowry. I'm sure people watching like, oh, I'm sure you endorse all your books. Well, we don't love every single thing we're going to read.
Right. So, but it's more of the edge of your seat.
Right.
And my brother, who loves to read and review books, said most books give you a place to stop overnight, but this one just plows through all the stop signs.
Ooh.
Oh, so those are kind of my two favorite
Right.
comments about the book.
Oh, and I want to read this book, Blood Moon Redemption, but I don't know when I'm going to have the time to read it. But that sounds like a good book club book. Would you think it'd be great for book clubs?
Yes, yeah. And then I have another Florida story that's historical. It's a cowboy story of all things.
Oh.
I have it's called Run with the Wind. It's a sweet Christmas story. Run with the Wind is the cowboy story. Christmas Ivy is a sweet Christmas story. It's a short story. And then my Society of the Land is kind of speculative and futuristic, except it's seeming more and more present day, where you're incarcerated and retrained for having life within, and grandfather is teaching them how to survive in a world where they're persecuted.
That old truth is stranger than fiction. Antidote becoming true.
And then, being from Wisconsin,
I love it.
I have my Cheesehead devotionals, my nonfiction books, and they take you to the. Hold on, my phone wanted to ring. They take you to the game or to a player, and then I draw a life principle from that. So it's a daily devotional.
Oh, okay. I was looking on your book list, and I was like, what is a Cheesehead devotional? And it didn't occur to me, Wisconsin, cheeseheads.
Cheeseheads. I am a cheesehead.
I love that, though.
Big Packer fan, yes.
Have you gotten any Packer players to endorse it for you?
Well, Brett Favre, the famous quarterback, his mom wrote my foreword for one. And Reggie White, who was our famous defensive player, his wife wrote the foreword for the other.
Well done.
Yeah, so that was pretty exciting to get those.
Absolutely. Now I think I kind of want to read it just because that's well crafted. We were talking earlier about how you're in so many different genres, and you mentioned how you've never been able to box yourself in. Do you want to go into that for our audience? Because I think they'll be really encouraged.
Well, when I first started, I was looking for an agent, and I sat down at a conference and talked with an agent, and so she kind of was asking me what I wanted to write, or I think I was working on Society of the Lamb, and and all of that. And she just said, well, find your niche and stay with it. Mm-hmm. And I've never been able to do that.
Right.
Because these stories come and it's okay. This is who I am.
Right. This is who you are. Is there anything that you do consistently that you think has helped propel your books and helped guide you as a writer? Or is it just following the passions that God gives you?
Well, I think you do need to follow the passion that God gives you, but you also need to work on your craft. And that the best place that I've found, the best advice I ever got was to go to a writer's conference.
Okay.
And there you get the workshops, you get the connections, you talk with the publishers, the editors, and then you establish networks where you begin to hone your craft. And I think that's been very, very key. And often that's where you meet your publishers,
right.
At conferences. So that's been very key for me. And,
so workshopping.
Yes, workshops and everything, and networking and critique groups. Mm-hmm. And then you just have to do it.
Right.
Because it's always like, someday I'm going to write a book. Right. Someday.
Right.
Or someday I'm going to finish this. And and as we said, I'm not disciplined in my timing. I'm a pantster, and sometimes I just write. I do the 45-minute principle. I'm just going to write for 45 minutes and then off on my walk or something.
But I like that, the 45-minute principle. I know you're saying you're not disciplined, but that's still 45 minutes, and you can get a lot accomplished in
Yes.
45 minutes. So do you just do that every day, every weekday? Do you have an amount you try to write during 1 week's time?
Again, I can't.
No.
The more I set those kind of goals, the more I fail.
Right.
so, I don't unless I have a deadline.
Right. So this
You
is where
know,
your true artist comes out.
I guess. I mean, I was a teacher, so I understand,
Right.
discipline and on time, and you have to be here, at 1:23, all of that kind of thing. But with writing, it just hasn't. It isn't there.
What did you teach when you taught?
I taught fifth grade.
Oh my goodness. How fun was
Yeah,
that? Have any of
yeah.
your students read your books that you know of?
I think yes, they have because we're in a small community, and so they have. It's been a while. They're all grown up now, almost
Mm-hmm.
all the ones that I had. So
That probably helped hone your sense of humor. From my teacher friends, I think that teaching is the thing that really has to shape you and give you a sense of humor, or it's going to break you. So you end up with one or the other there. So
yes, yes,
probably why you're good at different genres too, because you're teaching fifth grade, you're teaching various subjects. So
yes.
maybe.
And you're teaching such, variety of
Mm-hmm.
people. And I think that's one thing that I know someone said it, and I think I don't think it was meant to be a compliment.
Oh
It was
no.
when I said, well, I taught fifth grade for 22 years, and they said, oh, well, that would explain, why your reading is just, it's so easy to read.
Well, thank you. I
Yes, yep,
appreciate that.
yep.
But you know
Yeah,
what? Sometimes we want a lighter but well crafted
yeah,
story.
yeah.
Because we were talking at work, we were talking about how this past year people are either reading things that are like how to homestead, how to homeschool, how to bake bread, or if they're reading any fiction at all, it's something very that they can enjoy and get away from the modern
Right,
world in.
right.
Because that's what you need when you're under crisis. So you're obviously feeling that need in the world, even if you don't have, I don't even know what they're referring to, but whatever that person was referring to,
Mm-hmm.
there's nothing wrong with being accessible. Um,
Yes.
how long did it take to write Lainey?
Lainey, well, first of all, let me just mention Blood Moon Redemption. I wrote that in like 9 or 10 months.
Okay.
Because I really, just really did,
Focused.
spend a lot of time. But it took 3 years before
Okay.
it got published.
Okay.
Lainey, I wrote over a period of a good 3 years, I think just because life was busy, but it was published very quickly.
Okay.
So
Do you notice any difference in your writing if you write something over a period of years versus in 1 year? Do you see any different consistencies in the story?
that's a good question. I don't know. I have one that I'm trying to finish that I started years ago, and I have to keep kind of going back and getting myself in the mindset
Mm-hmm.
of that one and lots of times when I'm writing, I'm not quite sure where we're going.
Right.
Sometimes the characters just take over and I go, "Oh, okay.
Yeah.
We'll go that way."
Right. The characters are living their life and you're just transcribing it.
Exactly.
Um,
Exactly.
in a book club I'm in, we read this book and I was looking at the notes and it said that it took this man 20 years to write it and it was
Oh,
such a
wow.
disjointed book. So
Oh,
I think that at a certain point it's good to make sure that there's consistency in it.
yes.
I think sometimes we admire people who take 25 years to write their manifesto and then we look at it and we're like,
Maybe
so.
not.
But I've not heard that about any of your books. All of your books have been, everyone raves about them, which is really cool.
Well, that's nice to hear.
Right? That makes me really happy. So you're writing a sequel to Lainey.
I
Um,
am.
is it set in the same area?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. It's going
I
to
guess you
be
wouldn't have traveled that much.
It's Addie of the Door Islands.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And I won't give too much about how she comes to be there. So
I think that'll be really exciting for your fans,
yeah,
especially as people start to connect your books with that location to have like a series.
yes,
I think that's really important. and really exciting. You mentioned when we were talking earlier that you wrote poetry when you were a teenager. Have you
Yeah.
incorporated any of that into your books now?
No, not at
Okay.
all.
Okay. That's all
Uh,
good. That's good.
it's funny, and what's interesting is when I was in college, the notebook that I had all my poetry in, I lost it.
Okay.
And so it's like, whoa. So, and so I don't really write much of it anymore. And there's so many people that write such beautiful stuff now. So,
I know. I'm always a little overwhelmed by everyone else's poetry, and I just think I'll keep mine hidden
yes.
away. And
Yes.
something we discussed when I asked you when you started writing was you mentioned that when you had little children and stuff, you had to essentially just put it down for a while. And is there anything that you have to say to parents of young children regarding writing or things like that?
I think you don't get down on yourself. Life is very busy with little children and other things that whether if you've got a job besides and all of that. And so, but kind of nurture it in your heart. And if you have a few minutes to sit down and write, if that's really your hunger, then when the kids are in bed, give yourself, and do that 45 minutes. Like, okay, I'll just sit down for 45 minutes. I don't have 5 hours, but I can do that. And
Right.
so, and enjoy it. Just, enjoy it. It'll all come.
I think that is great advice. I think people need that, especially writers. I think writing is an art form that scares people sometimes because they just I think it feels really personal to some people. Have you considered teaching writing workshops ever yourself?
I have done a couple of classes at our library, just a single class here and a single class there, just some tips for helping people get started in writing. And I've done book talks, different places and that. So that's I haven't thought so much about having a regular
Right.
class.
I think that you could bring a lot to students with both your
Okay.
background in teaching and your ability to write in various genres and just a very down to earth view of it. Which, so, if you ever want to go into that, you have my endorsement because I think that you would be a
Okay.
great asset to a lot of people personally. So, we were talking about how often ideas pop in your head when you're walking on the beach. And I think you said something like your mind is free to think that. You want to go into that because I thought that was fascinating.
Well, there's all sorts of, no matter what happens, there, imagination. You just go. All my friends know. They say, "Oh, I see the gears turning, Judy. There's another book," and I have all sorts of ideas, and it's too many. It's more than I can handle, and so I have to wait for the one that sticks to my spirit. But when I'm walking on the beach, then my mind has that time to wander, and I can get into things. In fact, another book was just formulating in my mind one time last year when I was walking, and I kept pushing it away and saying, no, 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 I don't have time. I have to do this, I have to do that. No, 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 no. And now that I'm writing a sequel to Lainey, I'm thinking, that book would make a good third book for a series if I wanted to do a series. So it's sort of like, okay, Lord, can you remind me of some of that? So, but I think I kind of remember what I did. I just had to push it away.
Right.
But those
That's
ideas come, yeah.
I love that idea. Almost like you need a sticky note for books 5 years later. Like I need the sticky note to write this book.
And I know a lot of people probably carry a tape recorder,
Right.
with them or their phone. I guess you can just record on your phone.
Mm-hmm.
And I could have done that, but I didn't.
It's
So,
just not your writing style, writing
right.
mode. So, which is really important. I think it's good to remind people, not just authors, but any sort of creative, that they still need to find their style, even if that style isn't the one that all the textbooks say they need to be.
Right.
But also workshops so that you get other people's advice, so you're not just writing candy canes into the clouds and no one wants to read that, or whatever people want to do.
Right.
Judy, thank you so much for joining me today. This has been really fun for me. Thank you for showing me the Florida sunshine. My Californian expat heart is really grateful. It's very cold here. So thank you. This has been really, really fun. I'm going to put Blood Moon Redemption on my personal, not affiliated with my job, book club list. And I am going to definitely give Lainey as gifts to people. So...
Oh, wonderful.
Yes.
I should mention that Ambassador International will be publishing my children's book this year. I don't know exactly when it's coming out, but...
I don't know either.
You're the one I'm supposed to ask, right? No.
Well, I can check, but I don't know off the top of my head.
Yeah, and it's called I Want a Water Buffalo for Christmas.
Oh, yes. Yes, and is it Christmas related, or does it just have Christmas in the title?
It's a little bit, but not totally.
Okay, yeah. Well, I'll buy that for my kids. Like Judy said, we are publishing I Want a Water Buffalo for Christmas this year. Go to her website, follow her. She has a lot of great books, and I think there's something here for everybody, including football players. So there you go. All right, everyone. My name is Susanna Maurer. I'm the Publicity Director for Ambassador International, and this was episode 3 of our author interview, this time with author Judy DuCharme. Like us on Facebook, like us on YouTube, and follow us everywhere. All right, everyone. Have a great night.